YouTube. We are. Good morning. We are live from Council Chambers this morning. Before we begin, I will go over the emergency response plan for the room. In an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery take direction from security, and Council will take direction from the meeting clerk. After evacuating the room, please proceed to a stairwell, take the stairs to ground level, and evacuate the building through the doors marked emergency exit and go to the muster point. Do not take an elevator or walk through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility should identify themselves to security or the meeting clerk during the evacuation. And please speak with security or the meeting clerk if you require first aid. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. At this time, I would like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of TD6 territory and the Métis homeland, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakura, Siouxes, Métis, and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. We will do a roll call of committee colleagues. Councillor Paquette.
Good morning.
Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Councillor Principe.
Good morning.
Councillor Tang.
Good morning.
And we also have other colleagues joining us. Councillor Stevenson.
Good morning.
Councillor Rutherford.
Good morning.
Councillor Rice.
Good morning.
And Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Okay. Adoption of the agenda. Councillor Cardinal, you want to do that?
Sure. I will move the agenda. I was just looking for changes, but there isn't any, so
Nope.
I'll move adoption of the agenda.
Yeah, please vote.
I am a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Principe.
Yes too.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Councillor Principe, you want to move the minutes?
Sure, I'll move approval of the minutes from January 22nd, 2025 Executive Committee meeting.
Okay, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, please vote.
I am a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Principe. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Are there any protocol items? See none. Select items for debate. Councillor Cardmel?
I will select item 6.1 with speakers and 7.1.
7-1. I don't see any other selections. Can someone move the balance, please?
I will move the balance of the items.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. And can you please read back to us? We have already approved.
Thank you, Mayor. This morning, Executive Committee has approved the recommendations in item 7.2, taxes recommended for cancellation write-off, cancellation of uncollectible taxes and penalties, and item 7.3, bylaw 20944, closure of vehicular access to titled parcels on 106th Street in support of the Warehouse Park project, both which will be proceeding to council.
Thank you. Request to speak. We do have one, and I'll move that we hear from Vukas Piquez from Operative Plasters and Cement Masons International Association and Building Trades of Alberta on item 6.1, Sustainable Procurement Policy, Subcontractor Compliance. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. A request for specific time on agenda is none. Councillor inquiries, any councillor inquiries? None. Reports to be dealt with at a different meeting, none. Requests to reschedule reports, none. Unfinished business, well, we do have unfinished business from last meeting, which is sustainable procurement policy, subcontractor compliance. And we will go to that item now, and I'll ask administration to come down and make a presentation.
Good morning. This report responds to a council motion about metrics to evaluate subcontractors regarding compliance with the city's sustainable procurement policy. The Sustainable Procurement Program helps the city select contractors that can deliver the best overall value for Edmontonians, not just for price and quality, but also environmental and social considerations. The policy also advances the city's Indigenous framework and anti-racism objectives. We started to add sustainable benefit requirements into contracts last year, and our sustainable procurement program continues to develop. Since the addition in 2023, 90% of the city's competitive procurements include sustainable benefit criteria. The city has robust policies and procedures in place to ensure contractors and their subcontractors are meeting their obligations, including sustainable procurement policy requirements. Our contracts lay out clear expectations and indicate how the city can enforce compliance issues. With me today is Sarab Sarabi, Branch Manager of Corporate Procurement and Supply Services, and I'll now pass it over to Sarab for the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Stacy. Next slide, please. The city has made numerous advancements in the Sustainable Procurement Program in the last few years. The program is governed by 4 overarching policy and guiding principles, as shown on this slide. The Sustainable Procurement Program provides information about how the policy will be implemented, has tools to put the program into practice, and engages with the city staff and stakeholders on the importance, impact, and purpose of sustainable procurement. Previously at the Executive Committee, we provided an update on the city's social procurement, Indigenous procurement, and community benefit agreement frameworks. Other program tools include the Sustainable Low-Value Purchase Guideline, Sustainable Procurement Menu, and an Indigenous Set-Aside approach. Since our last update, we have finalized the Measurement and Reporting Framework and the Diversity Spend Reporting Framework. We will explain them in more detail later in this presentation. Next slide, please. While the city enters into contracts with the primary contractor, all subcontractors must also adhere to the obligations as outlined in the contract, including sustainable procurement criteria. Each contract is unique and requires a specific level of review, management, and oversight throughout. Not every contract will require the application of all the mechanisms the city has in place. The city contract managers keep track of the progress and performance throughout the entire term of the contract in a variety of ways. These include, but are not limited to, regular project meetings, site visits, inspections, quality control reviews, and managing disputes. The city has also recently centralized contract management functions, which will allow teams greater consistency in managing, reporting, and improving sustainability reviews. All city standard contract templates include audit provisions for all records relating to the contract. This is next slide, please. This slide shows each step of the contract life cycle and options available to the city to enhance and ensure contractor and subcontractor compliance. We believe that the mechanisms that we have in place are robust and consider the subcontractor throughout. We also took the opportunity provided by the committee's motion to complete a thorough review identify improvement opportunities, conduct market research, and make adjustment to our existing strategies and tools to further support this work. The next 3 slides will provide details on these items and the work we are doing to enhance subcontractor compliance. Next slide, please. Included in the report as attachment 2, the Sustainable Procurement Menu is a tool that provides a number of procurement evaluation and contract requirement options the city can incorporate into procurements. Contractors respond to selected requirements when they bid. If their bid is successful, the contractor and any subcontractors must then comply with the requirements they have committed to. The menu is being updated to clarify subcontractors' reporting requirements, highlighting that it is contractors' responsibility to ensure their subcontractors are compliant. Once a menu item is selected and incorporated into the contract, they become requirements of the work, and they are as mandatory as all other contract requirements. Administration uses various engagement tools and opportunities to connect with the stakeholders groups to listen to their concerns. We take appropriate action to continuously enhance and improve our policies and practices based on this feedback. Market research and engagement influences the city's procurement strategies and assists in ensuring compliance with the policy requirements. Administration recently issued a request for information to explore different sustainable procurement tracking and verification services. An update on this effort can be provided in CPSS May report, Annual Delegation of Authority. Another example is a recent jurisdictional scan and analysis conducted for the city by Bisocial Canada. This analysis focused on the use of labor registries to support compliance among contractors and subcontractors. The scan reviewed whether other municipalities document or require reporting to confirm the employment status of workers of their contractors in an effort to combat employment of undocumented workers. The Bisocial report confirms that municipalities do not administer labor registries. However, we are still considering the information to identify the city's next step. Administration continuously engages with various vendor communities through different means, such as selling to the city sessions described in the report. Next slide, please. For the contract management work, administration have reviewed its suppliers' code of conduct to ensure subcontractor compliance is clear and specific throughout, including the contractor's responsibilities in ensuring the compliance of their contractors that is in alignment with their own obligations. All city standard contract templates include audit provisions that allow the city to audit all records related to the contract. For contracts that include sustainable procurement requirements, contractors are now required to report regularly on their compliance with contract requirements, which include subcontractors. We have augmented the city's right under the contract to audit, explaining contractor and subcontractor mandates to follow ethical standards, safety requirements, training, and more. Within its existing procurement system, the city can track and report on the use of sustainable procurement menu items in its contract, the new measurement and reporting framework, and diversity spend reporting framework will help us evaluate regular contractor reporting on various ethical, environmental, indigenous, and social value considerations included in the city contracts. The city sometimes receives unverified concerns about the conduct of contractors and subcontractors. While the city is open to investigating official reports, many issues fall under the jurisdiction of other levels of government and regulatory agencies. These other entities have authority and capacity to investigate and enforce matters of conduct that the city does not have. A draft guideline for responding to complaints regarding city contractors and subcontractors is included in the report as attachment number 6. The city's, next slide please. The city's Supplier Performance Management, or SPM program, evaluates the contractors and subcontractors and consultants' performance. A specific checkpoint evaluations allow the contractor and the city to correct course, improve performance, and ensure compliance. Scoring was recently added to the program to reflect a contractor and subcontractor commitment to meeting sustainable procurement obligation and further evaluate compliance within each contract. A contractor's final supplier performance rating is supposed to apply to future procurement opportunities when the program is fully established and implemented. A good score is going to give contractors who perform well an edge over poor performing contractors in the bid evaluation process. Unsatisfactory performance could result in a contractor being placed on probation or suspension. The city is also working to expand the reasons that a contractor may be suspended from working with the city to capture non-compliance with the sustainable procurement policy requirements, which will be incorporated into a guideline. This will provide the city more flexibility to suspend contractors who are not operating in compliance with contracts or otherwise exhibiting behaviors the city determines is inappropriate. Next slide, please. As we have touched throughout this presentation, the city is continuously looking for ways to improve effectiveness, clarity, and compliance in its contracts. Throughout the city's new measurement and reporting frameworks and supplier performance management program, we will collect valuable insight and data to report on compliance for sustainable procurement. Thank you, and we would be glad to take any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We have a speaker, and we'll go to the speaker first, then once we have concluded that, and come back to administration for questions. We have Vikas Piquez, right?
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, please go ahead. You might be new to the process. You will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. And after that, committee members and council members may have questions to you. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to come here today and present this. I would like to take the opportunity to discuss regarding to the City of Edmonton sustainable procurement policies, particularly regarding to the subcontractor. I work for the local union. My name is Vikas Piquez. I've been 5 years organizer with OPCMI, Plaster Cement Mason, and also representing the builders trade of Alberta. I'm personally been witness on the LRT and also the municipal project is being done the work here regarding to the subcontractor. So defining the subcontractor is like a lot of these subcontractors they just employ and they've been abusing by the general contractor or the subcontractor, you know. So this practice raises significant issues regarding to complying with the labor laws and ethics standards. The policy emphasizes that the contractors are responsible for the subcontractor, yet the reality is that many subcontractors they are seen converting this obligation and undermining the policy, and instead posting the rest to the work involved who might be a lack of protection and affordable to the employer. Additional to this, they come to our attention to our members that using their personal vehicles and for a company business, which is raise the safety and liability concern. They're using the personal vehicles to transport the equipment and material, not only on the question accountability and also highlight the gap in the current monitor process. The supplying code of conduct must be enforced regularly and current framework does not sufficient in addressing how these practices are monitored and reported, leaving the room for potential abusing. This policy state of the city has mechanisms in place to monitor and comply, including auditor, provides, and performance manager. However, their effectiveness in this measurement is questionable. The city should be considered to implement more stringent and reporting requirements as a regular auditor and subcontractor, particularly those engaging independent contractor and undocumented workers. So the last 5 years I've been as an organizer, I was witness like so many undocumented workers is being present on the municipal project. And also a lot of the subcontractors that they're claiming they are the subcontractor, they just employees. Employees usually as immigrants, they come here and they're not familiar with the system. And that's the reason a lot of these contractors are taking advantage of them because they induce them to go and get a GST number and work under that. And coming from the third world country, like in most of them, I know we don't have that GST number and we don't have a personal taxes and places down there. So for us, we're just coming here to try to make a living. And that's the reason most of these immigrants, they come and working under the GST number without the knowledge that they have to pay taxes, you know. So saying that, that's my issue I bring in today on behalf of the OPCMI, Plaster Cement Mason, and the BTA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We'll open for questions from committee members. Councilor Cartmel, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Piquez. So I just want to kind of break down what I think we've heard, just for clarity of understanding, if that's okay. So, the city will enter into a contract with a contractor to build something. Correct? Yeah? People online can't see you nod, sir, so you have to actually answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So then those subcontractors are then responsible for different parts of the work.
Yes.
Are you saying that some of those subcontractors don't have the qualifications to do the work that they're being assigned? Is that
Well,
one of the concerns?
most of the general contractor, they're using their big name to get the job,
Yeah,
And if you're going down on the line, there's different trades and different qualification. But I can only speak on behalf of the cement masons and the laborers. And most of these guys, they've been just unqualified individuals who go there, A lot of them is undocumented workers. Like I bring this issue many times to the city. I know there was multiple times where the CBS officers, they attended to the Yellowhead.
Yeah.
And they shut down the site, and everybody was running around. Same thing with the West End on the LRT,
so let's break that down a little bit further. So there's a subcontractor company that is retained by the general contractor to do cement work.
Yes,
Cement masons work.
Yes, sir.
And that work needs to be done by properly qualified tradespeople, journeymen.
Yeah, that's true.
And are you suggesting that some of the people actually doing the work are not journeymen? They're not properly certified to do the work?
Well, a lot of them, they're not properly certified to do their work, but a lot of them, they're actually very good workers, but just, they don't have the proper documentation to work on these municipal projects, or in Canada, actually. And what I find, what's going on is a lot of immigrants like me who've been in the country for almost 20 years will target these vulnerable immigrants, and they told them, oh, no worry, just come and work with me, I will pay you straight up.
So that's my next question. You spoke to, I think the words you used were undocumented workers.
Yes.
So is your concern or the concern of your union that we've got people that are doing the work that might not have the proper qualifications or at least the proper tickets and to do the work?
Yeah, and I bring this up with the builder's trade many times already about fake certification on safety tickets. And my concern is I'm here on behalf of 300 cement masons.
Yeah.
Most of our cement masons that work out of town because they don't have any work over here. And most of these big general contractors, they're not interested to work with us. And usually it's because of the profit they're getting on site from these undocumented workers and the subcontractor.
Well, so that implies that those undocumented workers are not getting a fair wage for their work, whether they're documented or not. They're being paid a substandard wage.
Yes, they're not getting the benefits or pension or anything like that. But like I was trying to say, for them that's okay. Because I came from the country like that 20 years ago. And there is nothing down there. If you don't work through the government, you're not qualified to get pensions or
Well,
benefits.
for them, they may be satisfied that they're making any wage at all, understanding that everybody has their own individual circumstances. But we have a program here which is intended to not only, provide bare subsistence, but, a fair wage for fair work. I think that's part of the goal here.
And yeah, that's one of the code of the conduct I see. Also, they said they're supposed to be supporting apprentice. Well, if you see all the work that you guys provide here in Edmonton, if that's the case, we should have a minimum, at least 300 new apprentices, for the cement mason because it's cement everywhere.
Yeah.
So we don't have one. And we're trying to keep this trade alive, but we lost all the market share. And that's the reason, I come here and bring this issue to you guys.
Are there situations where, so the contractor will hire a subcontractor to do the cement work, we'll just stick to that the subcontracting cement company will then hire a subcontractor to do the work?
Yeah, so that's how the operator to
Yeah.
circumvent, most of the liabilities, Like a guy like me who been here 20 years, I get a work because the superintendent is a friend of mine. So I said, you know what, no worry, I'm gonna get the guys, and you can get some money, he can get some money. And most of these guys, they come in as a subcontractor, but they are no subcontractor because they're working there 10 hours a day and they've been directing about all these guys.
And so this is what you mean that, somebody could go get a GST number,
Yes.
and now they're somehow viewed as a contractor that is hired by a subcontractor to do cement work who's got the contract from the general contractor. Am I following that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. Councillor Tang?
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Pecaz. And I also, appreciate some of the conversations I've had with some of your colleagues from the union about this issue. I guess maybe just to continue that on, I thought that was really great at, laying out really clearly what the problem is. I guess how, the administration just presented the evaluation and monitoring framework. And, on paper, we talk about the contractors and their subcontractors have to comply by all the rules and laws, including making sure their workers are authorized to work. I guess I'm wondering, from what you heard this morning, do you have any suggestions, or where do you see is the gap? What needs to be strengthened from a city policy wise, recognizing that's where we can have the greatest control, but like what is missing? What do you see is the ideal, I guess, pathway?
Well, for me, that's
Oh yes, that's for you.
okay. So, well, I think you guys have a great policy in place. They call the conduct. It just seems like the way that you guys been enforcing is the gap there between you guys and the general contractor and the subcontractor. Like I said before, it's not an easy test. I don't have all the answers, just like you guys. I've been in this position for 5 years, and I've been trying to do my best to advocate for our members. So by thinking the easy way is, like I know you guys mentioned they have a different force test that have been in place, like the CBS here. Usually they do range and they go into the job size. And I think it's just something like they have to follow up with the general contractor, and they have to be accountable for that, Like when they get caught on one of these big projects, like I remember the last year in Yellowhead, they shut down, the entire Yellowhead is shut down because all the guys start running away. Well, nothing happened to the general contractor. Nothing happened. We even tried to reach to them and inform this general contractor that they have undocumented workers that have been exploring there, and they never actually answered to us. So we're looking for help anywhere we can, and I don't have the right answer or I don't have the solution, but we're definitely here to help them. I know the BTA or Alberta, they've been before voluntary. We can help you guys to police this job size and notify you guys if we see something like this.
Okay, well, I appreciate your openness there for certainly conversation, and I'm also wondering, you have mentioned there's 300 contract, none of that went to any of your members who are certified, and legal to work, et cetera, et cetera. I guess I'm just wondering how big the issue is. Is it just affecting your trade, or is it multiple trade? Yeah.
Well, right now they're affecting most of the sole trade. Yeah, sole trade is mean like how to have the certification in order to do their work. But how they getting this so popular, and this I was lucky enough to win in United States before I moved to Canada, and I see this happen down there, and it's not helping the economy of United States. Actually, they're actually making worse because they're creating this underground economy. And what I see in these days is before it was only limited to residential. Today is actually commercial, industrial. Like last year, it was some of the guys in Suncor. They walk in Suncor with somebody else's ID. For our members, in order to go to some jobs like that, they had to do E&D tests, they had to get all the tickets, they had to provide all this to the company. But there again, the subcontractors, they can walk in, performing the work, which they not qualify, because some of my members, they're there, and they call me and they say, well, these guys, they cannot do the work.
Yeah.
So what are we doing?
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. And then just finally, it seems that you're obviously very concerned about if unenforced, this creates the room for people, for subcontractors who are underpaying, potentially underpaying their employees' wages to compete with those of you who are I guess, more established. At the same time, you're also concerned about just workers who are not protected and being exploited, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, a lot
Yeah,
of
great.
these workers, like in the case, I bring this to the Alberta Builders Trade, it was a worker who worked here on the 149 on the telecenter.
Gotcha.
Well, that worker fall 30 feet down. And he
Wow.
was an
Okay, thank
undocumented
you so
worker.
much. I'm out of time.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. So this is what I'm hearing from you, that the problem that you're identifying is not unique to Edmonton, city of Edmonton work. It is a problem that exists in other areas as well, right?
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, right. So do you know what other organizations, what tools they're using to catch some of these infractions of undocumented folks being hired, violation of the labor standards? Do you have any insight or knowledge in what other employers or organizations are doing?
Well, most of the general contractor that you guys provide them all the work,
Yeah.
that's what they're doing, you know,
Okay.
through subbing.
Right.
You know, because by subbing the work, they say, well, the liability is on me, it's on this company.
Yeah.
But this actually is not a company. This is just Jose and Pedro, you know, which they don't have the understanding how the system works until the government called in and said, you know what, now you owe me $11,000 in tax, and we want you tax.
Right. But what I want to know is that how are other, say, government of Alberta, they do build a lot of infrastructure, private sector does a lot of infrastructure, they hire contractors, then they're subcontractors, right? So how do they enforce? Is there anything that we can learn on the enforcement side that we are not currently doing that we could actually do?
Okay. Well, like I said before, I don't have all the answers, but I think you guys have a great procurement policies, you know, and I think it just is in fact that somebody actually going down there and enforce this,
Yeah, so
physical, because it's easy to go through the computers and get a meeting and say everything is fine, but actually going down there to the job site and make sure this is going on. You know?
It does CBSA, the Canadian Border Security Agency, and Alberta Government Labor Standards, federal government labor standards folks, are they aware of these challenges?
Yes, I bring this many times. I actually work with them in many cases, but their hands, they're also tied, because they have to go through the process. So what are they doing if they show up to one of these sites? Well, they get the individual, they take him to the downtown, the fingerprinted, and then they have to give you the date on the court. So the guy can go apply for silence, or he can go up, bring his case to the government of Canada, So usually what happened is like the particular case I'm talking about, the Yellowhead, it was about 6 or 7 guys that get caught there on site, the rest that ran away, and the next day he was working there.
I have heard these concerns from Building Trades of Alberta and other unions, but I have also heard these concerns from some of the immigrant serving organizations that speak on behalf of the undocumented population, the exploitation that undocumented people are facing because they're in that precarious situation and they have to work and they are not being properly paid or protected or labor standards not being enforced.
Yes.
You're hearing that as well from...
I hear from there, from Migranta, you're talking about. Migranta is the organization who represent undocumented workers here in Edmonton and Alberta.
Yeah.
So I also work with them at one point.
Yeah. Migrante is one of those organizations
Yes.
that does a lot of work in that area.
This is just an idea, but maybe, you know, like for the subcontractors, maybe there is something they can put the government, I don't know how exactly, but maybe build up a course, you know, because it's very easy to get a GST number. I can go online and get a GST number, and I don't know where any of the law or anything like that, but if we attach that GST number from, I said maybe 72 hours of course, or some, you know, qualification you have to in order to get that GST, maybe that's going to help to solve the issue, because a lot of these guys, they don't speak the language. So you will not be able to make the course if you know, have a good understanding on that.
Okay.
That's just an idea.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for joining us. Really,
Thank you
really
very much for
appreciate
your
it.
time.
But don't go away yet. There are more questions. Councillor Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that you come forward with some ideas. I think as far as the GST, that's a federal program. That would have to be something done through them. My concern, I guess, is around the workers and not knowing what their rights or what our safety and labor laws are. So what's the risk of them not knowing these?
The rest is I spoke about that project down there, Telecenter. That fellow, he fell down, and I guess he broke his arm, and he got some also back injury. Well, now he's in welfare. Well, not in welfare, but in double CV here, you know. And most of them, they don't have that. If the injury is not that far, what they do is they just put them on the plane. They told them to go to Mexico and come back when they're okay. You always have a job here with us. But that's not the case. As soon as they show up down there, they go down there, they start talking to them, and that's it.
Okay, and then I'm wondering about, okay, so like the personal risk as well. You also talked about using personal vehicles, so there's a
Yes.
financial risk then too, right?
Not only the financial risk, but also for the members. Like say, if you get into the accident to going from one point to the LRT to the other one, well, his vehicle doesn't have the proper insurance, the liability of $2 million. So he's probably in his own. If something bad happened to him during that accident, well, where he's gonna go? So this is the issue we bring to the contractor, and we sit down and we try to explain them, you know. And a lot of times they don't see that because this contractor is actually one of the contractors who was operate always like that, you know.
So the contractor can't be held liable, or if the city has the contract with the contractor, and maybe this is something I'll ask our admin.
This is something you have to ask. Is beyond my knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. So if the city then is liable
the
for something,
city probably is going to be liable for this.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for taking the time to come out today. That's all I've got right now.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. So that concludes the questions from council colleagues to you. Once again, we really appreciate that you took the time to be here with us. Thank you.
Again, thank you everyone for your time.
Of course, yeah. Now we'll go to administration for questions. Councilor Cardwell.
Thank you. So, I guess we've heard the concern, like this is top of mind, that we've got potentially undocumented people that are performing work. First of all, potentially unqualified to do the work. And secondly, without all of the presumed supports that workers of a legitimate contracting company would have, safety programs, safety inspections, compliance with the Safety Association. There's a whole regime there. Liability insurance, comprehensive general liability insurance, health supports. If we have situations where we have people that have nothing more than a GST number performing work as if they are a subcontractor or a sub-subcontractor, what do we have to address that?
So again, as we discussed throughout the presentation, Councillor, we have options under procurement, under contracts process, and in the supplier performance evaluation to review those concerns. But in many cases, subcontractors' compliance doesn't fall under the contract we have with the contractor. So everything we do is to making sure the contractors is performing their obligations in terms of ensuring things you mentioned are not happening in their contracts. Anything beyond that, I believe it falls under other jurisdiction, other orders of government to investigate and take action accordingly. We are open to look into these if there are complaints. There are different channels. Again, I talked about a few during the presentation. But again, in general, it's all on the contractors and making sure they are doing their due diligence for the compliance.
So can I add?
Sure.
So maybe what I would say is, at the end of the day, our legal relationship is with the general contractor that we hire to do the work. And so what we try to do through this framework is build as many controls as possible into the procurement to make sure that we're getting the right kind of folks bidding on the work. We then have things that we can enable in terms of subcontractor selection. So in certain contracts, we can say yes or no to subcontracts. It's not necessarily on every project. And we monitor performance. But it ultimately means that if these things are happening, we need to actually hold the general contractor accountable through the supplier performance framework and take actions with the general contractor. That also, though, means that we need to know about the things, we need them to be reported, and we need to have evidence of them in order to be able to take those actions.
So I see two possibilities here. One would be that yes, very strictly, we have a legal contract with just the general, and it's the general that has, knock-on legal requirements. Incidentally, in my own experience, I've seen this too. One example is drywall crews. So, very, very legitimate general contractors are building a building, and they, subcontract the drywall work to a legitimate drywall company, but then that company is hiring a sub, and that's where the lines of responsibility and oversight blur. So is there something that we could add to our contract with the general that puts in some sort of penalties if these circumstances are found to exist on a city project? That would be one. And the second would be, can we set up some sort of a whistleblower opportunity for people so that we are aware, and that would initiate a investigation to, into a particular project or particular circumstances?
Councillor Cartman, there are all provisions already in our contract that would allow us to take action if the contractors, the general, is not doing what they are supposed to do to ensure compliance. Some of the provisions in there includes penalties, like them non-complying with their...
Are they, so I'm just watching my time.
Yeah.
Are they meaningful? Right, like $100 fine on a $100 million project is not meaningful. I don't know if that's the kind of thing we're talking about, but are there meaningful impacts?
I believe they are as strong as other remedies and options we have in the contract for any of the contractual obligations they have to deliver. Like, same as delaying on the project, same as performance, the same provisions are applicable to sustainable procurement. We have Ms. Hughes on the call, one of our procurement lawyers. If you would like
my
to, I
time
can
is
ask
up,
her.
but one of my colleagues might ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's come for a second round.
Okay.
Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you. Maybe happy to go to Ms. Hughes to answer that question, because I was also kind of wondering what happens if there is a penalty, and you had talked about the penalties are as meaningful as some of the other pieces, and you mentioned delay in projects, and wondering if you can give a few other examples.
Yes, Councillor King. So we are able to, if a contractor or their subcontractors are not complying with applicable laws, so for example, employing workers who do not have status to work in Canada, we can hold that contractor in default. And if they don't remedy the situation within a limited period of time, we can terminate the contract with them.
Okay.
So that is a remedy that we have.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. And I guess just on monitoring and, evaluating if the contractors are compliant, it's based on the report they submit to us. But do we ever do anything like random inspections on site, or anything like that?
I believe if any of my colleagues from IAS may want to speak a little bit more into the way they manage the contracts on construction side, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I can answer that question. As it relates specifically to the enforcement side on the contract management side, we don't have teams that have the skills or abilities to really understand even what to look for, to be honest. So when we receive these complaints, like we don't have the ability to understand the eligibility, whether or not they're carded or legal, what their employment standing is federally. But we do work closely with organizations like the mayor mentioned, the Canadian Border Services Agency. So when we do hear these complaints, we do work with them and provide them access to all the information within our contracts as part of our work. And by extension, the general contractors are responsible for accommodating their investigation as they look into these complaints.
Yeah, and you know, I also don't want to kind of raise a ton of fear around, especially those who are already facing very challenging circumstances. Are we in the report you talk about you work with you know, different union groups and industry? Do you also work with, for example, Migrante that was mentioned earlier, so that they have the information to educate their community members so that they know what their rights are? Sorry, this is perhaps to procurement, I guess.
Yes, Councillor, we have frequent communication with different stakeholders, different communities to understand the concerns. We have the Selling to the City sessions that provide training opportunities for, it is actually recently being more targeted towards the small businesses, underrepresented groups. So yeah, we have those touch points.
Right, I'm not talking about business community, I'm talking more about, you know, I mean, this conversation has alluded to that it's not just the business community or contractors, it's also union groups, it's also immigrant serving organizations. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, those conversations you're having and training is extended.
Yes, we have a sustainable advisory group that it has representations from groups you mentioned, unions.
I see, okay.
And we have ERIC, which is the group that is supporting new immigrants in Canada at the council too. And we use those opportunities to educate, share resources, create awareness.
And I also thought the speaker had some very, I think, practical suggestions, like similar to the procuring with the city info sessions, but maybe info sessions for the subcontractors. But it sounds like, you know, our direct connection there is with the general contractor. And if we provide any information, it is up to them to share that information down, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm almost out of time, but I may have one more question. Oh, I think I can squeeze it in. Just wondering, since the 2023, this policy kind of framework went in place, has there been kind of any tangible, any trends or changes that we've seen over the last year?
Sorry, trends on?
Just like how has it changed in our bidding procurement process?
Well, I think the support from the industry, from the businesses responding has been very positive. We have constantly been talking with other stakeholders. We believe the implementation was smooth. We haven't faced any significant challenges or pushback on the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Principe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question about on attachment 5, the scoring, the ranking. If you look at like the questions and the potential responses, never meets agreed upon deliverables specifications. The pre-grade score then is a 30. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of the scoring system. So if someone never does something, they still get a score of 30? Is that what I'm to understand?
Sure, I can just start by saying the one you're looking at is for the supplier performance program. So this is post-contract execution or during the contract execution, making sure they are delivering on their contractual obligations as they are supposed to. But if you want more detail on the scoring, I can pass it over to my colleague, Mrs. Smith, who can give us a little bit details on how the scoring is being done.
Thank you. So each contract would, in essence, get scored throughout the lifetime of the contract. And yeah, the way it sits now is that some of the lower scores, they would be getting a score, but it would all be, I guess, relevant across the board. So if you're getting a 30, and the next company is also performing poorly in that response, they would also get a 30. So it would provide kind of that benchmark across the board.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that that was unusual that someone, not that 30 is a great score. However, for someone to even get a score for never meeting a deliverable, never meeting upon delivery, never effective at managing changes to scope, still receiving a score, to me is unusual. I would see it as a 0 or a flag or something that we need to, just something to recognize that. And I just want to make sure that there's something in place that's acknowledged or recognized.
I think that we can, I can say that this program is being reassessed and relaunched this year. So that's something that we can take back and look at further.
Okay, thank you. And my other questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that the work you have done over the last number of years has put our sustainable framework in a good position. It's a sound framework, and you have a good relationship with contractors, general contractors, and industry buy-in is there. But the issue is when it goes down to subcontractors and further subcontractors, the issue of monitoring and enforcement is a challenge.
Correct, but I think it takes time for the food program benefits gets to all the routes and subcontracting levels. As you mentioned, it's a
so it's
new
not
program.
trickling down yet to what our expectations are. Are they do general contractors know what our expectations are? They're in the
know.
contract, right?
It's in the contract, but again, we are constantly in touch with the major association, industry associations, also unions in the city, creating awareness, doing presentation on the program, expectations, answering questions. And as I mentioned, the buy-in and support so far has been positive.
Has there been any examples where we went to the general contractor, say, have we penalized any general contractors for not complying with the policy? Have we taken any action? Has there been any, or is it just too new at this time that we are in that process of education and involvement and engagement?
It's in the process, but we have examples of where we know there are compliance issues, and we have been negotiating, talking with contractors to find ways to make those contracts in compliance. It's still in discussion. We can share more details as it is contract specific in private, but conversation has already started.
Got it, okay. Because this is not just an issue on the construction side, right? But I'm also hearing concerns around janitorial work, for example, landscaping work, where you have a general contractor, they subcontract, then they further subcontract, then they end up hiring, folks who are in very vulnerable positions, and they exploit those vulnerabilities, right? So, and same thing in other areas, right? So there is a problem out there, and we just need to find out what mechanism that we have as a city. Maybe the question is how you work with CBSA, I think we heard that from our IAS folks, if they identify a problem. Are there opportunities for us to proactively engage with CBSA, Alberta labor standards, federal labor standards, and other organizations that do have the enforcement tools? Is there ability for us to engage with them, kind of work together and say, this is a problem, how we can work together to solve it?
So I think for those examples that we are aware of, those authorities are all aware of the concerns, either directly from the city or in most of the cases through individuals that have concern, and investigation work that needs to be happen is happening. Something to note though, again, is going back to our contractual obligations with the JLR contractors and legality of some of these situations, that unless the situation is verified by a legal authority, they need to be careful of how city would bring up those concerns, not to putting ourselves in a liability or a
Yes.
legal situation of.
I was more interested in kind of creating a table to, are conversations happening in a disjointed way? Like we're having this conversation, CBAS might be having this conversation, Alberta Federal Labor Department might be having conversation. Like who would have the ability to kind of convene and say, look, and learn from each other, what we can do together?
Yeah, we can definitely take that back and try to reach out, but I think it's best if from the federal or
Yes.
provincial levels,
Yeah.
they take the lead on
Yeah.
this. And part of the reason of that attachment, giving specific details of who to go and talk to, is to also help those vulnerable individuals that may not know where to go, to have some guidance on how to navigate those situations. That document is meant to be available publicly, and we are going to advocate and introduce it in selling to the city sessions, engagement sessions we have with unions, through our advisory committee, to put the word out there that help is available. Just make sure you know who to talk to about your concerns.
Okay, I'm running out of time. Councillor Paquette?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you touched on some of the things that I had wanted to ask. So I guess to further refine that, I'm just curious about what the legislative chain of responsibility is in this area. That's the accountability chain. Because obviously municipalities don't regulate or legislate a lot of the different aspects that could lead to the situation. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that.
Sure, I would ask Ms. Hughes. I know they have done some research on this work from legal services to answer that question.
Okay.
Hi, Councillor Paquette. In terms of the legislative chain of responsibility, it really depends on the specific issue that's being raised. For instance, immigration issues or authorization to work would be federal jurisdiction, while things like occupational health and safety and labor standards, employment standards would be provincial jurisdiction. And then, of course, anything criminal would be something that our Edmonton Police Service could investigate as well. So it really depends on the specific issue as to which authority would be responsible for that.
Okay. So further to the mayor's questions then, how would we convene an all hands kind of conversation on that? Because it seems to me that the recourse right now is a bunch of letters flying back and forth, and I'm not sure if that's going to help us.
Councilor Paquette, I'm not sure we know the answer to this. Like, if we can take that back and look at whether it's an advocacy strategy or like what the appropriate way to convene orders of government that need to be engaged on the issue, but who we probably have to be able to show evidence of issues in order to get traction on them.
Okay. So, and I guess that's the next question. So we've got someone speaking to us today about these issues. We've heard about these issues from other sources, but do we have evidence ourselves? Are we even looking for evidence of these practices?
I don't believe we do, like at the level of municipality and the contracts we are managing. I'm not aware of us having like a defendable, verified evidence. I can ask my colleagues from IAS to comment if they have something beyond what I know. I guess probably not.
Okay. All right, so it seems that would be sort of step one in this process, if we were to move forward. Okay, so, and then just shifting gears a little bit, hearing about like the contractor, then the subcontractor, the subcontractor. It, I am worried that like, it sounds like we've got layers of middlemen sort of skimming some of those dollars off of contracts that, and I don't know, it sounds like maybe their job is not actually to build things, but just to send out subcontracts and they make their profit that way. Have we taken a look at that to see how that affects sort of the streamlining of dollars, making sure that dollars are being well spent?
Yes, Councillor Paquette, as part of our procurement strategies, especially after the introduction of the sustainable procurement menu and the program, every time we are conducting a new program, we look into strategies of deciding on whether we want to work with generals or how we can provide more opportunities to do directly business with the individual and businesses that are capable to deliver the services. But again, I just want to remind the council that we have approximately 1,700 active contracts with over $20 billion of dollar values committed. And it's hard if we do not decide to work through the general contractors in one capacity or the other. We still lean on many of those generals to manage the work, decide on subcontracting, take care of insurance requirements, safety requirements, and deliver the services. But we believe there will be opportunities for doing more business with the smaller businesses. And also throughout our sustainable procurement menu, we are planning to have our general contractors hiring more of those small businesses or provide more opportunities for the subcontracting groups that, like fair opportunities for the subcontracting groups to do more for the city throughout those contracts.
No, I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you so much. Was really excited to read this report, and there is just, so much that I think is really wonderful in terms of the work that's happening. I want to dig into a few pieces that I'm particularly excited about. So the measuring and reporting framework looks really wonderful. And my understanding, we'll sort of expect the first report in Q2 of next year of 2026 as part of the annual delegation report.
Well, I believe the first report is going to come in May 2025. So you could expect some of the initial updates in that report, Councillor.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And then with some of the measuring that we're capturing, I note that we don't have anything around locally owned businesses unless, and I may have missed that, I apologize if so. And I know that we're fairly constrained in our ability to prioritize local spending, but I wonder if that's still worth capturing just in terms of showing how our property tax dollars are going back into the local economy.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's not in there, we can take it back and make sure we are capturing that data. But I know in our annual delegation report last few years, we reported on the number of contracts awarded to local businesses. So probably as it was something we have been reporting on, it's not in the new structure, but we can definitely make sure that information is coming to the council.
Great, wonderful. And then I just wanted a bit of clarity. So both of the documents, the diversity spending and measure and reporting framework, on the cover pages, they say approved on date and it's just blank. So I just want to confirm, by accepting this report today for information, is council approving those two new frameworks?
Those reports, Councillor, falls under the policy implementation work, and I believe they are within the administration authority to review and approve. So I can confirm they are both approved and in place. Okay,
that's great.
Yeah.
So just going to the menus. So I think that's a really great approach. There's language in the report that city staff are strongly encouraged to review and use the menu for applicable procurements. It looks like we're also, seeing a great uptake going from, 10% in 2020 to 90% in 2024. Just wanting to understand, again, it seems like that encouragement is working fairly well. Does it become a requirement at a certain point, or, are we aiming for 100% making use of some of the menu items?
We are aiming for 100%, Councillor Stevenson, for 2025. We were very close to that number in 2024 as well.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's great to hear. Just wondering too, if what ongoing opportunities are there for vendors with the city and those not vending to the city to be providing sort of continuous feedback for improvement? So, again, I've heard concerns with Ariba, how that program works. Do we have sort of a standing satisfaction survey or review that helps to capture areas for continuous improvement?
Well, we have different avenues for vendors to connect with the city and provide feedback. Again, selling to the city sessions, and that we are trying to have as many as possible throughout the year, is aiming to provide education training, but also seeking feedback from individuals on any potential improvement opportunities on the program. As I mentioned earlier, we engage with communities, especially equity deserving communities, quite frequently, hearing their concerns, trying to help them out on how to bid on city projects and listening to their concerns. And then we have our Purchase with Purpose events, which we had one last year, where we did a reverse trade show and put city buyers in booths, and we listened to all underrepresented groups coming to that sessions. We also invited many indigenous businesses. Great conversations between city staff and those individuals happened, and we tend to have more of those sessions. Lastly, we have an advisory committee that is formed from, I think, many union associations, indigenous
great.
bands.
I just wanted to in one last
Sorry,
question.
it's a lot.
All that. No, that's great. So I think that one of the barriers that smaller businesses can face working with the city is simply in the size of the contracts. And I think this goes into this question that my colleagues were raising around subcontracting. So I understand, there's the report coming in May, and will that be a good opportunity for us to discuss how the city approaches sort of the packaging of different procurement options to maybe create smaller opportunities for smaller businesses?
I believe so, and I can confirm those conversations are already happening on how we can have more direct opportunities for small businesses.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all the work.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Just, I guess, a quick question to legal. Is there anything in the contracts that, and what's the term, indemnifies, or us, I guess, the city from being sued in the event that there is insufficient insurance or accidents that happen on the job?
Councillor, yes, we do have in our standard templates indemnification obligations. It varies slightly by the type of contract, but in our construction contracts and goods and services contracts, it is quite a broad indemnification for anything arising from the work.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I had.
Thank you. So, just want to follow. So if city finds evidence of any non-compliance with whatever is in the contract for general contractor, then we can act, right? Then we can act if there's not complying.
Yes, we can act.
Issue for us is that we cannot act until we have evidence, and then also if other violations take place, there's other processes that are able to deal with those. So if somebody's not found guilty, you just can't take again. Like that, then we put ourselves in a liability, right?
That's correct.
Right, okay. So when you come back in May, would that provide us with I know, first of all, I want to follow up on Councillor Stevenson. I'm really interested in this, breaking down these big contracts into smaller contracts, right? And giving more opportunity for small businesses to directly bid instead of being a subcontractor, right? Or a subcontractor of a subcontractor, right? So we'll have that conversation in May. Would May conversation also provide opportunity to around what can we do to advocate, convene, right? Would you be able to provide some insights, how we can deal with some of the expectations that are there out there, that our city contract, the city work should not be a place where these type of violations happen.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the report in front of the executive committee today has, I believe, enough details in terms of what city is doing and what we have done since we received the motion to augment.
Okay. I'm more interested, like who can convene the bigger table, right? Who can convene all these different players? That's what I'm interested in. Is I think we don't have that ability and authority to do so, but who would have that ability and authorities? If we could have that conversation in May, then follow up on that.
Yeah, if we can take that away and follow up, and if we have an answer or an understanding before May, I think we would just simply communicate that by way of memo.
Yeah, because I think this is a bigger problem, and that goes beyond cities' authorities and scope, right? So, okay, got it. On the how are we doing overall? Like, I'm really excited about this work, and I want to commend you for how far we have come on this, and actually Edmonton is being recognized for this work nationally. So how are we doing on opportunities for, say, Indigenous businesses, racialized businesses, and training, apprenticeship opportunities? How are we doing on some of that work?
I believe, Mr. Mayor, the progress on that one has also been really good since the implementation of, like adding the Indigenous procurement as a main pillar to the policy in 2022. And we are actually having a conversation with the executive leadership team tomorrow to finalize and approve our set-aside program that would offer opportunities directly for Indigenous businesses to bid on, with the goal of capacity building and supporting Indigenous businesses to compete in future procurement opportunities on their own. So far, we have actually two examples, good examples of set-aside program award to Indigenous businesses. In both of those cases, the prices came in quite reasonably within the expectations, and the performance on those two work, one construction project, one related to inspection services, was very satisfactory to my colleagues on the business area side, and we will continue to engage, support, and advocate for Indigenous procurement framework to be implemented and used.
Yeah, and how is the outreach going for those communities? How are we reaching out?
Yeah, so they all, like many of the bands and groups, they have representation on our Sustainable Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
And then we also do one-on-one communication with a couple of them. We actually have standing check-in points to make sure we are staying in touch, exploring their opportunities, and supporting them navigating through city procurement. So there are various ways we use to connect and stay in touch.
That's good work. And also simplifying the process, because one thing I'm hearing out in the community, that if somebody's a new business, they want to bid on city work, that they find it difficult to navigate the system.
Absolutely. And again, just maybe I can ask from the council as well that selling to the city sessions information is on our website. And if you ever get asked about opportunities, I believe that is the greatest starting point to make the connection.
Good, thank you. Councillor Tang?
I'm just on to put the motion on the table to receive for information.
Go ahead.
I move to receive for information.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Carry on if there are any other questions on this. Right. So I have a couple of questions remaining that I want to ask. Coming back to the enforcement, like we have auditing ability, right? And have we done any auditing, proactive or so far?
To the extent I'm aware, we haven't done any active auditing, but we have those provisions. And the intent of clauses is to do audit when there are concerns reported, and we know nobody else is looking into them. Those couple of examples that we were aware, we know that authorities were looking into them, so we didn't do an audit ourselves.
Yeah, okay. Maybe as we carry on this path, right? And maybe there'll be opportunity for maybe proactive. I don't know if there's, you go back and say, okay, we had this contract, now it's over, let's see how things went. I don't know, like maybe something to think about, right? And also, coming back to opportunity for small businesses, how do we, like, ability to break down these big contracts, particularly ongoing work such as, say, janitorial work, right? To break it down to small pieces, building to building, or, you know, or department to department, like giving more of a social enterprise opportunities, right? Where also help us achieve our other objectives.
Mr. Mayor, while again, as I mentioned, looking into opportunities for small businesses through set-aside approaches is something we are considering for, like, examples you use. Right. But I just wanted to share a few numbers with you. So, like, for the cleaning contracts you mentioned, custodial contracts, for example, we have 12 contracts, 6 vendors, and 256 facilities. And then these 12 contracts is 12 out of 1,700 contracts that we are managing. So I think we still want to be able to use the benefits of economy of scale, be competitive, and put less burden on city staff to manage subcontracting contracts, but also provide those opportunities for smaller businesses. We believe the best way to do that is through the social procurement menu that we have, and by encouraging the generals that we work with to provide more opportunities for small businesses, and then through everything we presented today, ensure compliance and a fair treatment to those subcontracting.
No, I understand, like, you know, having 256 contracts for 256 facilities, not manageable, but still I think you could have maybe more than 12, right? So I think that's what I'm getting at, right? Yeah. You know, there's opportunities for to eliminate that middle person or middle organization that takes maybe 15-20% of the profit, and maybe there's an opportunity for for us to save money. So that's why I'm raising those concerns. Good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for all the work you've been doing on this. Okay. All right. So we have motion on the floor. Anyone to speak? I'll quickly say a few words again. Thank you to you, and thank you to our speaker for joining us and highlighting those concerns. We have heard those concerns in the past as well, and we have limited tools that are available to us. I think we have put a good framework in place, and now we look at opportunities, how we can enforce what the expectations are of our general contractors, and how general contractors can hold their subcontractors accountable. So it's a journey that we went on for the last few years. I think we're getting better, but we have a little longer to go yet on this, right? So thank you for coming over and raising these concerns, and we are hearing those from other folks as well. We tried to figure out what role we can play in dealing with some of these abusive situations that do take place in workplaces. No, thank you. With that, I'll go to Councillor Tang to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate the conversation today. You know, a few years ago when I was working at the city, I've had some experiences working with small businesses, ethno-cultural and racialized enterprises, and at the time it was a lot of conversation, good conversations about the barriers that they were facing working with the city. And I think the report today and all the attachments has demonstrated that we have come a long way. You know, I think the report, the package is very strong, it's very robust, lots of really good information, and also the administration is intending to share with the public, with business community, etc. And I think it demonstrates a huge progress. Certainly, there's lots of other concerns, as Mr. Mayor mentioned, and appreciate the feedback that the speaker brought forward that other union stakeholders have shared with me in the past few weeks. But there's a much bigger conversation beyond city's authority and scope of work. I think what is important to me and I think I got that information, is that administration is very open to keeping the conversation and maintaining contact with those stakeholders, with very diverse stakeholders at the local level, and do what we can through our responsibility with the general contractor, and ensuring that we have mechanisms and pathways with other through other mechanisms to address the issue. I guess I also just want to end, this conversation has also made me reflect. I know it's been delayed through a few executive committee meetings, and during that delay, we've seen a lot of changes around the globe, in particular with a lot of the tariff conversations, and once again, a greater emphasis around supporting local procurement, etc. And I feel like today's conversation kind of has given or has that added lens for me when I listen to the presentation and the questions from my colleagues. Again, thanks to administration and thank you for making this policy, this constant improvement. I think is really important, and also to all the stakeholders who have provided input. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. So please vote. Oops.
Waiting on one vote. Councillor Prince-Bay? That's okay. Thank you. We have all the votes now.
Okay, display the votes, please. That is carried. Now we are on to 7.1. Policy C583A update. Henderson Estates and Ledger. Okay. We'll go to administration for a presentation. Councillor Paquette, can you take the chair? Just to get a step out for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I have the chair.
Okay.
Are we waiting on a presentation?
Yes, Councillor. Just 1 second.
Sure. Take your time.
Good morning, members of Executive Committee. My name is Neil Ozaduk, and I'm the Director of Land Development for the City of Edmonton. With me is Stuart Carrick from the Housing Action Team. Today we're here to request an update to Policy C583A that will facilitate an exchange of uses for a surplus school site in Henderson Estates with a school site in Ledger that is currently identified for a Francophone school. Next slide, please. The Henderson Estates surplus school site is located in the southwest corner of the Henderson Park, as shown in blue on the slide. The site is currently identified as an affordable housing development under Policy C583A, developing surplus school sites. The Ledger school site is located in the Brian Anderson Athletic Grounds, just southwest of the Booster Juice Recreation Center in Twilliger, as shown in red on the slide. For several years, administration had been in discussions with the Edmonton Public School Board regarding the potential surplusing or exchange of the Ledger site for affordable housing purposes. EPSB had indicated the likelihood of the site being developed for a school was low, and administration viewed this as a potential opportunity. When EPSB declared the site surplus in 2024, the Francophone School Board, who I will refer to as CSCN going forward in this presentation, claimed the site in alignment with the processes outlined in the Joint Use Agreement. CSCN noted when they claimed the site that they were willing to work with the city's administration to exchange their newly claimed Ledger school site for a surplus school site located in Henderson Estates. To that end, they have preemptively sought approval from the Minister of Education to exchange the Ledger site for the Henderson one. The Brian Anderson Athletic Grounds are known to have challenging soil conditions due to an old gravel pit that was operated in the area. The backfill that was used to cover that gravel pit is generally not suitable for development. Investigations by administration determined that the currently approved school site has poor soil conditions up to a depth of 15 meters. As a result, administration also investigated a potential alternative site located directly northwest of the approved school site, shown in green on the slide. This site also shares some of the poor soil conditions on the eastern side, though to a lower extent, and on the west side it was found to have suitable soils for development. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates the proposed exchange in land uses. If the recommendation in this report is approved, the following three land use changes would occur. Firstly, the Henderson Estates surplus school site would be allocated to CSCN to allow them to construct a school in the location should it be prioritized and funded by the province. This site is illustrated in red on the slide. Second, the affordable housing development would be relocated to the alternate site within the athletic grounds as shown in blue. Lastly, the original school site in Ledger would be allocated for district park uses and is indicated in green. Next slide, please. This exchange would have several positive outcomes for both the city and CSEN. The board has indicated that the Henderson Estates site is intended to be paired with a site in Haddo that they had previously claimed. The board pairs public and Catholic schools with similar age cohorts for busing, which reduces their costs. They have indicated that they would include the Henderson and Haddo sites as priorities on their capital plan they submit to the province for potential funding. While there's no guarantee that the sites would receive funding, the likelihood is increased given the province's School Construction Accelerator program. The Ledger site is located near transit, existing schools, recreation center, and a future library. It is larger and would allow for a more dense development, therefore creating more units. While the Ledger site is more expensive to service than the Henderson Estate site, due to the higher number of units, it is anticipated to have a lower per door cost to develop. An important consideration is that this is not a land sale or an acquisition. The City of Edmonton owns both sites and will continue to own both sites. This exchange simply changes the intended land use for each site and requires no exchange of funds. This approval would be the last step in a long line of approvals from EPSB, CSEN, the Minister of Education, and the Joint Use Agreement Steering Committee. If the update to policy C583A is approved today, it will trigger the revisions to the Joint Use Agreement and finalize this exchange. If the update is not approved, administration would advance development of the Henderson Estate site in alignment with policy C583A, and CSCN would continue to have an interest in the Ledger school site. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time. We would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I return the chair.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Councillor Cardinal.
Thank you. I don't have really any questions. I was going to move the recommendation. Which
Go ahead,
is,
please.
Oh, sorry. Which is that Executive Committee recommend to City Council that policy C583A, developing surplus school sites, be updated to 1, remove Henderson Estates from the list of applicable surplus school sites, and 2, add Ledger to the list of applicable surplus school sites.
Councillor Cartmel, before you continue, can we just put some clarified wording just to make it more clear that council is going to be approving the updated policy and see if that's amenable to you?
You kind of lost me. Oh, okay.
Just a slight revision, thank you.
Yeah, I can read that in if you like. So I'll move the following then. 1, that policy C583A, developing surplus school sites, be updated to A, remove Henderson Estates from the list of applicable surplus sites, and B, add Ledger to the list of applicable surplus school sites. And 2, that Executive Committee recommend to City Council that policy C583A, developing surplus school sites as amended, be approved.
Okay, great. You have questions, Councillor Cardinal?
My only question is, we had lots of conversation around surplus school sites in the last few weeks with respect to the Housing Accelerator Fund, and I'm just wondering if there's any connection with this site and those conversations?
Yes, we have made CMHC aware that this swap was contemplated. The CMHC recognizes the school as being infrastructure that supports housing, so they are amenable to, or they haven't given any issue with the proposed swap. They would, though, like to see the site that we would be swapping to developed in an expedient manner.
Right. Yeah. Those are all my questions, and I have a subsequent motion should this pass. Thank you.
Okay. So just to follow up on that, the Henderson site is not part of the half application sites, right? That we 11 that we approved.
It was not part of the 11 previously.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to make sure that it's not, doesn't put any half funding in jeopardy or anything, right?
The application to CMHC was for 12 sites to be developed.
Okay.
And so the Henderson Estates is a larger portion of that 12. However, they are, like I say, amenable to the idea of the swap for the purpose of a school being built.
Okay.
But would like to then see the development move forward expediently. And
on the Ledger side?
Yes.
So within same timelines, right?
Approximately, recognizing that we would be starting from a later point with the rezoning, but they have expressed some flexibility in that, but they would like to see that move expediently.
Okay, so the Ledger side would have to come for rezoning to council?
That is the intention, is that we would.
Would Henderson side would have come for, or is Henderson side already rezoned?
No.
Okay, so I see, okay, so it's so would the timelines be the same then for Ledger to come to council for rezoning?
There's, we would be working a little bit inside different premises of the contract, but at this point, due to the specificity of this potential swap, they are amenable to working with us. But
No, I understand, I understand the CMHC is, but I
Yeah.
want to understand the timelines from administration side and city side. Does this push back the rezoning process because we're swapping, or would the rezoning process would be kind of same timelines that you would have for Henderson side?
Yeah, the rezoning timelines are the same for both because neither, like they would both have to be rezoned.
Yeah.
So we'd kind of be in a similar situation regardless.
Okay, so now that you head on Henderson and so I guess it's good, that's important to understand. So the timelines would not be an issue, right? Subject to council approval, obviously.
Yeah, subject to council approval.
Okay, got it. And also the Henderson site accommodates less housing than the Ledger side would, right? So per door cost is going to be less?
Yeah, so the Henderson
For
site
affordable
is,
housing.
it's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
And it just, neighborhood context would probably mean it would be to a lower zoning, so we think probably something like RMH 16.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would have fewer units than what we would get out of the Ledger site, which is larger, and we think we could go with, say, an RMH 23, so we'd get more units. So yeah, it's a little bit more to develop, but when you look at the units that you could get out of each site, the per door cost we're anticipating is going to be lower at Ledger.
Yeah. And does the communities around Ledger, the communities around Henderson would know, right, about that site has been surplused? Because it's been surplus for a while. Do communities around Ledger know that this site is now surplused?
The site was only just recently surplus. Yeah. It is somewhat contingent on the decision of council. So we made the community leagues of the area aware of this discussion at council. Yeah. And that would be the first time that they became aware of this.
Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask that to Councillor Cartmel as the mover of this.
Yeah. So the recent information might be the formal information. This swap, this series of conversations has been going on in the community for 4 years, because I've led it, and it's been going on for 4 years.
So they're aware that
Absolutely,
that this swap may happen, right? Okay.
Yep.
And that housing may get built on Ledger.
Absolutely,
Okay, got
yes.
it. Okay, good, great.
Sorry, just one clarification. The site in Ledger is not surplus. It is currently identified for a school site for the Francophone, so this is about a swap. Just to
Okay, got it. Okay, good. Great, thank you. You're currently not surplus, but would, instead of school, housing would get developed.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if this motion is approved, we would swap
Yeah.
the interest in the
Yeah,
sites.
got it. Okay, good. Councillor Stevenson?
No, thank you. I removed my name. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that concludes the questions on this. Anyone to speak? Councillor Cartmel to close?
Yeah, very briefly. I think I've been talking about this at council for a really long time, so this is just the last piece in the sequence. I do have a subsequent that plays into this a little bit. And this is something that has been talked about a lot in the community. All of the surrounding community leagues are aware. The immediate community league, at the last minute is concerned about future recreation opportunities on the campus, just to be clear. There are other parts of the Brian Anderson Athletic Grounds that have lots of space available to allow for, modest improvements like a pickleball court or a splash pad. So there's no concerns there. And quite frankly, the communities really view this ledger site as a really positive opportunity for affordable housing, and in quantities, far in excess of what would be available at the Henderson site. Typically, the surplus school sites are at least in the ward I represent, are in that sort of 40, 50, 60 unit. And depending on the outcome of my subsequent, should it pass, there's an opportunity for far more housing here. And again, bookended by a transit center, a future library, and a recreation center. So it just makes so much sense. Appreciate your support.
Yep, thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes. Would you like us to display the vote, Mayor Sohi?
Oh, display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay, now subsequent. Councillor Cartmel?
Great, thank you. I believe the clerk has the wording, just a little bit different than was in the chat, modestly so.
Yep, we'll get that on the screen for you. Just one moment. We just need eScribe to catch up to where we are.
Yeah. So my motion is as follows, that Administration A, identify any further lands that are surplus to municipal requirements and that could feasibly be combined with the Ledger Affordable Housing site to create a more significant development opportunity. B, create a public offering that encourages proposals to deliver multi-city building outcomes through development of the site, including, but not limited to, library, parking, park amenities, and other housing opportunities. And C, return to the committee for approval prior to the development and or sale of the lands.
Can you introduce it?
Yeah, so building on the final slide in the presentation previous, there's lands that have been described as surplus, and there is, as administration has advised, there is some soil conditions there that are not the best for building on, but there is an opportunity there to combine all of those lands and see if there's not a bigger building opportunity here. And, something that might be a collaborative partnership with potential third-party partners to build not only housing, but to potentially build the Riverbend Library branch, to include it in an overarching partnership that would allow a few different pieces to be built with using different financial models, and potentially advance some of the things that this part of the city needs, including significant amounts of affordable housing. So administration will look at that. Third-party contractors would have the ability to look at that, consider the soil conditions, consider the larger land assembly, see what they can do with that to hit a few of these points that the community is looking for, and see if there's not something that can be built there. The intent is not to belabor this. or to delay it, but I have had conversations with a number of different proponents that see the opportunity here and would like to explore it. All with the understanding that there is the Housing Accelerator Fund considerations, that the primary goal here is to get a significant amount of affordable housing into a part of the city that frankly has very little of it. And so these are the shared goals, but there is an opportunity for a larger shared partnership thing here that we should at least explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. Councillor Stevenson?
Yeah, thank you. Just a few questions. First to the mover. So when you're talking about the combination of lands, is that sort of the red and the green that was highlighted on this slide?
It would be. There's even possibilities of like to the north of the green and to the east of the red. There's a couple of parking lots too that might also be considered. A bit of a land assembly, but it really depends on what various proponents might come forward with in terms of options and how much space and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and soil conditions too, presumably. So maybe just to administration, I think the biggest risk here is just in terms of a delay. It's a great opportunity to potentially expand the number of units. But again, also seems to maybe add to the timelines. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, this motion would definitely add to the timeline. So just thinking it through. So if we had to look for additional surplus lands, we got to do a circulation. I don't know if a needs assessment might be required to inform if we could surplus any lands, but that would definitely take a bit of time. Once we found some, if there was any surplus lands, we would have to create an offering, put it out there, have it be out there for enough time for folks to prepare a proposal, submit the proposal. We would have to negotiate with them on their proposal, and then once we had an agreement in place, then we could advance development of that site at that time. So I would say that would take in total probably 1 to 2 years to maybe 1.5 to before we could get back to a point where we'd be ready to submit LDA applications.
Yeah, I take that there may be additional opportunities on this site. Again, it seems like from administration's initial analysis, there's very limited building opportunity in that red parcel due to soil conditions. But I guess I'm just wondering if developing the green site, for lack of a better word, now would preclude any of that future work if there were opportunities that were identified down the road.
So the green area as like the original surplus school site. So that area would be very challenging, I would think, to develop.
No, the green area is the alternative surplus school site. Sorry.
Take it easy.
Yes.
Yeah, so all that to say that could be developed, and then there could be potential again for additional development as that site matures and develops over time. But I don't know how development on the green area would preclude any of that future work. It would be unlikely to have a single building, let's say, that extended beyond those boundaries.
I think if we were to develop the alternative school site for affordable housing, I would suspect it would be developed fully for affordable housing, like in the short term. So I don't know how much expansion we could do.
Councillor Stevenson, it's Kim. I'm just going to make a comment on, the intent is for us to move very quickly on the affordable housing site as to stay in line with the housing accelerator work. But the opportunity is just reflecting on some of the other lands in proximity to that site to see if there's a broader package that could be put together in terms of advancing the library, the park site or park amenities that might be able to be included in a broader proposal. But we wouldn't want that to delay the housing work.
Exactly, and I think that's what I'm trying to articulate. That it seems like they're not mutually exclusive. That the housing site development could move forward with some of that additional work coming subsequent.
Yeah, that's a potential way we could look at it, because as Neil noted, we do need to contemplate what would be surplus park space, but there's the parking lot, there's a library site, so it's looking at that sort of south end more holistically.
Yeah, and do we have a sense of where this branch location ranks on the prioritization list for EPL?
No, we don't, sorry.
Okay, no, that's all right. I may have a few other questions, but appreciate, just flagging some of those timeline concerns. Thank you.
Councillor Tang?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Zohi. Just trying to wrap my head around this one, just seeing it for the first time a few moments ago, I feel like the scope is significantly broader. So, okay, there's a bunch of questions asked on, I think, A and B. I'm curious about C, because we recently just had a discussion for the 11 sites around this delegation of authority. I guess maybe first to the mover, is that kind of what you're getting at for this one, is more that delegation of authority?
So, quite frankly, I don't know how to respond. The recreation center is built on that same filled in gravel pit. So this, I think that's a distracting comment, first of all, that this site is somehow compromised.
Sorry, I'm asking about part C.
Well, maybe repeat your question then, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Maybe I'll direct it to administration, because we just recently had this conversation about the 11 surplus site, and we had a big debate around, is it to committee for approval, or is it within the delegated authority of administration? And, one or the other will have implications on timeline. Is that your read as well? Is that for all the others, we have said that administration has a delegated authority, but for this one, it would be, if approved, it will return to committee for approval, which would maybe be different from all those other approvals?
I don't see it being too much of a challenge.
Okay.
With coming to committee, well, I guess maybe the wording of coming to committee prior to approval, that adds in another step, because that would imply we have to come back to executive committee.
And we're not doing this for the other 11 sites, right?
Well, no, we did in a sense that they had to come forward for rezoning, so that technically is prior to development. So to me, that would be something.
So it would be the same as this.
Yeah, and then the sale, assuming it's below market, we don't have delegated authority at this point to advance a sale below market. This one wasn't included in the last batch, so even if we wanted to do that beforehand, we would have to come back for delegated authority of that. So either way, I think there's two touch points ahead of us.
Okay, so this is a little bit different than I think my understanding then. Okay, that's helpful. And it just seems like, yeah, we're struggling with kind of, on one hand, I think I know where the mover's coming from, just to maximize the land opportunity here. But trying to balance it with advancing, I guess, our affordable housing priorities. Sorry, I'm just mulling on this. Okay, I guess I don't really have a question in there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Rutherford?
Yeah, thank you. Having only seen this for the first time when it was put in the chat, B is actually the most concerning to me. I guess, how do we ensure that Part B doesn't create any kind of queue jumping of already identified priorities around park development, libraries, etc.? To administration.
I think if when I read Part B, the idea is that this is something that a partner would be looking to develop. So I would assume that they would be the ones
there would still be city funding with the library. Would there not?
Potentially. I think that's what we would have to see when we come back with, when we put it out there and see what kind of proposals we get. Perhaps there's a proposal where someone proposes to build a building and we rent that out from them for, however long. So it could be a situation where they do put up the capital cost, but until we put that offering out there and see what kind of proposals we get back, I wouldn't be able to say for sure.
Yeah, I guess to Kim Petrin, you're there, right?
Yes, I'm here.
We have a lot of, like, we have a recreation master plan. We've done a lot of work, especially around the new parks, and some of our requirements around building parks and where there's gaps in our playground spaces. The library has a strategic plan and a capital priority list, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. I think, when I read this second part of the motion that you're referring to, it's just looking at how the public offering could look at what the private industry could help develop in terms of investment or doing, like, approaching development in a different way from a public infrastructure perspective.
Uh-huh. Yeah, do we have any other examples currently outside of greenfield development of this happening?
The one example, I'm just thinking of the library. There's a library in a commercial retail area, so it's within a bay of a commercial strip in terms of its location.
But the library, like, I've talked to the library about the Woodcroft location, for example, because that is a high priority for the library, but they do not, there is commercial space in the Woodcroft area in the Westmount Mall that they don't want to lease, they want to own. So like people can bring in bids, but then if they're confidential, how would you even have that conversation with somebody like the library to see if that's even something that they would want?
We would have to scope this with the library in terms of what that public offering could look like. So they need to be involved.
Okay, I have no further questions. I have no further questions.
Okay. Councillor Stevenson?
Well, thank you. Yeah, maybe just to the mover. So, I really appreciate the work that you've done on the swap. I think the new location makes a ton of sense, and I know that the length of time that it's taken for this to happen has been a source of frustration. So, just want to get your thoughts just in terms of these timelines, how you see that impacting the delivery of affordable housing in this area.
Well, first of all, I think that what has been presented as this linear timeline is not the path that need be followed. I've been having conversations that administration is aware of that talks about all of the things that have been considered here for years. So the minute this motion passes, a conversation can be had with a proponent that talks about the costs and the schedules of delivering all of the things that we're talking about here. And to be clear, we're talking about the Riverbend Library branch, which is number one on the public library's list of priorities. We have a design for a library branch that is $38 million, which is well over $2,000 a square foot, which is unbuildable in its form. So there's an opportunity here for a collaborative approach that would give us far more housing and potentially a library branch depending upon the commercial terms. We don't have to go through all of the steps to talk to a couple of proponents and find out if there's something that could be realized here or not. That's a matter of weeks, not a matter of years. So I reject the premise. We can explore these options very, very quickly and start thinking of outside the box about partnerships that allow us to develop the amenities we need.
Maybe just so I understand a bit better. So you've talked to proponents who have an interest in building a city library, like, integrated with housing, or I'm like, help me understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine a modest, as one scenario, not necessarily the scenario, and that's why I don't want to necessarily anchor this conversation with a particular scheme, but somebody that comes in and builds a building that contains a library and a few commercial pieces and builds, a significant amount of housing as part of one capital investment that has some combination of grant dollars, operating leases, capital leases, and other recovery, revenue recovery models, could end up being a whole that is far greater than the sum of the parts. These are things that other organizations have done. You know, it's effectively a collaborative, cooperative contracting model that allows everybody to gain.
Yeah, and I think maybe where I struggle is just again, you know, as you say, combination of grants, operate, but like if we have to find the funding for to grant at least a portion of the construction of the library, and that's not up until our next 4-year budget cycle in starting in 2027, like what's happening to the housing component in the meantime?
Well, I guess rather than wonder about that, let's go find out, because it might not cost us a penny, and we might be able to get all of it without any city dollars, but we won't find out unless we ask. And that's what this motion says. Let's go find out.
So then would there be the ability, and maybe like in terms of adding some parameters around that timeline? Because again, there is some real necessity around housing accelerator fund and meeting those deadlines. So would you be willing to put some parameters in this motion around take a month to explore this and then proceed on with development?
Well, I think we all understand the urgency, and my concern about putting in a deadline is that there might be some intriguing ideas that take, a few more weeks to tease out. And if we put in a hard deadline, then we don't have that opportunity. On the other hand, if things, aren't realizing the goals of the motion, then we, put a pin in it and we come back and we do the housing.
And absolutely. And it's just like, what is that? When do we say we put a pin in it? And I don't think that can be a year from now. And I hear you saying you don't want that to be a month from now, but is there something in between, just to give our administration clarity in terms of how much, time and effort they should be giving this alternative? Anyway, I'll come around to ask administration, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Paquette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an interesting motion, and there's merit to some of the questions that it asks. I'm just, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at it and just wondering if this is a larger policy conversation that we should be having, because the questions it's asking maybe should be a little bit wider spread. And it feels like this motion is changing or introducing a change in approach, which is not a bad thing, but maybe should be a larger conversation. So I'm just wondering if we should have this conversation as a notice of motion and a motion, so that people can actually delve into this rather than trying to make policy decisions on the fly.
Yeah, maybe there's a question to Councillor Cartmel. Well,
it's also a question to the chair.
Yeah, I hear you what you're saying, right? And I have just seen it now as well, right? So
yeah, this has not been before us.
Yeah, right. So maybe as a chair, I'll ask this to Councillor Cartmel. Would a notice of motion then have a council discussion on a broader policy implications? We would an approach that you would like to take?
Well, that would kill this particular opportunity. That's just a delay function on this particular combination of possibilities on this particular combination of land, because the answer is going to be, well, that'll take too long and delay the housing too long. I guess to me, it's a chicken and egg thing. I mean, if we go and have some conversation, I don't see the harm in going and having a few conversations. And if they bear fruit, and this is the exemplar that leads to a policy change, well then, that is the way to go. But to change the policy ahead of time requires anticipating any and all possibilities, and there's no way to do that without actually having the conversation. So, in its own way, this can be a bit of a pilot as to start conversations around combinations of contracts, partnerships, air rights, you know, 2 and 3 uses in the same space, those kinds of things.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I find that fair. I guess the only concern is that once this was put on the table today, it's the first time I've seen it, and this is, you know, inviting a very much larger conversation than just the conversation of the parcel of the lands today. So I'm wondering if this is a notice of motion, you know, like administration can anyway, until that conversation is had. I don't see that there's any way that this, in any major way, you know, impacts timelines. But I think that because I have only seen this, I have to think about my ward. I have to think about how I represent my ward, and I'm having trouble making a decision that could affect citywide policy on the fly on a motion that I have just seen and haven't had a chance to have a real conversation about or a real stop and think about.
Yeah, I hear you. I would have rather prefer this as a notice of motion, but Councillor Cardinal, as a member of the committee, has the right to put forward a subsequent motion, right? So, and I have to.
Well,
actually,
I understand, but
I
I don't want to vote against this, which I'm going to be forced to do because I haven't had adequate time to contemplate it.
Yeah, I hear you. So I don't know again. But Councillor Cardinal feels that this is the debate that we need to have.
Well, one member, well, I'm not sure if Councillor Stevenson's a member of the committee or not, but
No.
we've heard an apprehension that we want to reach this decision in a month, and we have somebody else saying, well, let's wait 2 weeks before we even decide if we want to talk about it. You know, I do not see how saying, hey, while we're at it, can we add more land for more housing and maybe see if we can get somebody to kick in some capital investment for a building that holds a library? I do not see how that becomes a massive policy shift that affects other wards. I do not understand the apprehension.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Mayor, and maybe that could all be true, but I think Councillor Carmel has had lots of time to think about this, and I've had the space of this conversation to think about it.
Yeah. Okay. I have some questions to administration. No, I know this is not you, but I wish I had seen this prior to the decision on the recommendation, because that would have influenced, not influenced, but maybe informed a little bit more additional questions around that recommendation. So what I want to know, with the approval of that recommendation, but not having, if this subsequent is not in front of us, what would your timeline be to bring the rezoning for Leger?
Realistically, so we would have some work we have to do ahead of us right now. I think it would be early 2026 we would be back in front of council for a rezoning.
Early 2026, yep. Okay. And that would have been the timeline for Henderson site as well, right?
Either or. So whichever site, if it would have been in Henderson, we would have been probably same timeline.
Right. And if you were to seek interest from, say, developers on any, like, you have to follow a established process. Like, you have to offer this in a public way, that this site is available. What are the opportunities are here to add a library or a rec center or another amenities? Like, this is a public process that you have to follow, right? To engage private sector. Like, it's not that you can't go to proponent A and B, but you have to open to anyone to be proposing creative, innovative ways of utilization site.
Yeah, we would definitely want to be putting this out to everyone. We typically don't enter into direct conversations with a single proponent on a piece of property.
Right. And that is where you're saying that process takes time, right?
Yeah, that process would definitely take time. I think there's the question of what additional lands we could put out, like what would we be even offering Right now, the only piece of land we have is the school site, so we would have to look to see if there's additional lands that we could offer.
Oh, I see.
And I
So
think
you-
that would be the first step before we could even put it out there.
So you would have to deal with part one first, right? Feasibility of additional lands and combining those lands into one. So that's a separate piece of work that you would have to do, and then go to private sector or proponents, say, we now have assembled this land. What could you possibly do with this land? Add more amenities such as libraries.
Correct, and then that conversation gets further complicated by the fact that what is the amenity and what's the need of the group that would be using that amenity? So what does EPL, if it was a library, what would they need? How do we build in the city facilities and all that? Like, that adds complexity to the agreement that would be delivered. So I think just all of these things adding up adds layers of complexity that definitely would take time to sort out.
Mm-hmm. Maybe this wouldn't be a fair question. Maybe to the mover. I know, Councilor Cardamel, you've been working on this for a few years, right? But is the administration, have you shared that with the administration?
On Friday afternoon, I had complete support with this for no questions. So this whole conversation is a complete surprise to me. And I've been popularizing this idea amongst council for years. So I also am very surprised to hear people say this is the first time they've heard of it, because I have been talking about this.
I'm talking
for a
about,
long time.
have you had these conferences, like, with administration?
I did.
Okay, Councilor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe just for a point of clarification so that I can understand if I've missed information that had been shared. So certainly have understood the proposal for a swap. I think it's these other pieces that I hadn't been aware of. So maybe just to the mover, again, apologies if I've missed it, but just wondering, when we've had information about this in front of us.
Well, formally, I suppose not at all, but informally, I've talked about this opportunity for a long time. I've had, I don't know, I can't count the number of conversations that I've talked about this assembly and the possibilities.
The land swap, absolutely, that is not a surprise at all. I think this integrated development with library, additional housing, like that's what's standing out as new to me. But from your perspective, this is something that's been shared previously.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't recollect those pieces. Then maybe to administration, following from my line of questioning before. Recognizing that the normal course of business would not have you back at council until early 2026 for rezoning. What does a parallel process of investigating some of these options look like? Can that happen in a parallel track? Or again, is there some definition around timelines that we could provide to you that would ensure that it doesn't detract from the overall direction?
Councilor, I can jump in on this one. I actually think that we could probably do a concurrent process where we do circulate the properties that are adjacent to the Leger site to see if there is an opportunity to surplus anything further. We do know, as Mr. Osaduk referenced, that there are some development considerations that make one of the sites less desirable, but certainly we could do that at the same time in terms of doing some extra due diligence to move the rezoning ahead. I think on the second question related to the public offering, I'll just add some commentary there. Through all of our public offerings, we don't really restrict any creative proposals that come forward from any proponent, and so ultimately, I don't see us varying our process on the public offering side of things with the creation or the implementation of this motion. We might offer some additional narrative to encourage some of those specific items. But we do, and I didn't jump in previously, but we do that quite regularly in terms of having openness from market proponents to come forward with their creative proposals that may deliver creative city building outcomes.
Yeah, like sort of, I mean, at the most extreme, sort of like an unsolicited proposal is still something that could be considered, but as you say, putting out offers doesn't limit. So it's just figuring out how much land is on offer. What would be the timeline for you putting this out for public offering? In the normal course of business, in the absence of this motion?
It would likely follow the rezoning and having certainty on that for a proponent coming forward. In terms of strategy on how that would look, you saw with the last batch of school sites, and this was referenced in one of the questions, that we did a pre-approval kind of arrangement. I'm not sure if that would be something that would be appropriate in this circumstance, but we'll likely bring something back for council's consideration following that rezoning conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just again, see sort of coming back to committee for that additional check-in. Again, I heard that there's going to be a check-in at the rezoning stage. This additional check-in could be complementary to that potentially.
Yeah, as Mr. Ossaduk referenced, the administration doesn't have delegated authority to do non-market sales. And so in any event, we think that there would be a required touch point with council in terms of an approval of a sale agreement. And so the addition of C within the motion doesn't create too much implication in terms of timing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Carmel?
Yeah, I'm going to withdraw this motion. Thank you.
Okay. All right, motion is withdrawn. Any response to councillor inquiries, private reports, motions pending? Motion pending tax forgiveness options, Southern Springs GP Limited. Councillor Tang. Oh,
Councillor Tang did indicate she had to step out.
I'm sorry?
Councillor Tang did indicate that she had to step away.
Oh, she has to step away.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to put that forward on behalf of Councillor Tang.
Okay, please go ahead.
All right. That administration bring a report to committee providing background and outlining the tax forgiveness options for Southern Springs GP Limited from 2020 to 2024 for property address 671 Watt Boulevard, Southwest, account 109345587, due May 14th, 2025.
Okay, can you make the introduction?
Mayor, before you proceed, just to confirm, are you then accepting this as a motion without customary notice since it was Councillor Tang that gave the notice originally?
Oh, so Councillor Paquette can move it?
No, Councillor Tang gave notice that she would make this motion today. So you have options. You can lay it over to your next executive committee meeting, or you can allow Councillor Paquette to make the same motion today. It would just be without customary notice because he did not give that notice.
I defer to the wisdom of the committee.
Well, I don't know how urgent this is, right? So did Councillor Paquette, did Councillor Tang indicate to you the urgency of this?
Yes.
That is, it is urgent?
Mr. Mayor, I do not know about the urgency of this motion. And so as a result, I cannot answer that question.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'm just checking if there's any.
Yeah, and I just sent a quick message to Councillor Tang, but I don't know if she can reply. I know she had an important meeting to go to. So while we're thinking about that, would it be possible for me to make my notice of motion?
You have a notice of motion. I'll come to that in a minute. So just need is there will on council to deal with this as a notice of motion without customary notice so that Councillor Paquette can move this motion related to the tax forgiveness. You have questions on, you can ask questions, but can he make, oh, he may not, yeah, Councillor Paquette may not be able to answer those questions. Okay.
That is my concern.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we'll leave it here for now, and we'll work offline with Councillor Tang if it's urgent, could be brought forward to council without a notice, without customary notice. Good, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. All right, so that is it. Councillor Paquette, notes of motions?
Yes. The administration, in connection with the Fiscal Gaps Work Plan, developed a draft framework to strengthen Edmonton's financial sustainability, future fiscal independence, and the potential of a legacy savings fund by exploring new revenue strategies, optimizing municipal assets, attracting investment to stimulate economic growth, and enhancing the city's capacity to leverage provincial and federal grants to their fullest potential. Further, that this framework, one, aligns with existing strategies, ensuring coherence with current city policies, financial plans, and operational frameworks. Two, identifies new opportunities, including innovative financial models, diversification strategies, and approaches to improve the management of municipal assets. Three, develops initiatives to position Edmonton as a competitive destination for business and industrial investment, fostering economic diversification and growth. And four, strengthens Edmonton's long-term financial resilience by addressing infrastructure and funding needs, stabilizing revenue streams, and ensuring the city's capacity to deliver essential services. And I will make that at the next available opportunity at council. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Any others? Sorry, Councillor Principe? Yeah, we're done, so, yeah, okay. All right, so that is it. We are adjourned.